Before we go any further, I just want to check something. Are you an atheist?
For all practical purposes, yes. Nobody can actually say for certain that anything doesn't exist. But I'm an atheist in the same way as I'm an a-leprechaunist and an a-fairyist and an a-pink unicornist.
So you're not 100% sure God doesn't exist, but you're sure enough to make it practically...
I'm as sure as you are sure that fairies and leprechauns don't exist.
And do you see an equivalence between the idea of God and the idea of a fairy and a leprechaun?
The evidence for both is equally poor.
You say in the God Delusion, one of my favourite sentences that jumps out of the page, that the God of the Old Testament is a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capricious, malevolent bully. As a piece of rhetoric, superb. But do you really believe that?
Congratulations on getting megalomaniacal right, by the way. Most people fumble on that. Yes, if you've actually read the Old Testament, I think you would have to agree. It's hideous. It's an the God of the Old Testament who is a monster.
But also the God of the Quran, the New Testament, the Hindu scripture?
Well, the God of the Quran, I don't know so much about. The God of the New Testament is widely advertised as being a bit more gentle. And certainly, on the whole, he is. There are things about the New Testament that I find, in a way, almost more objectionable than the Old Testament. But the sheer horror of the character, I said he was the most unpleasant character in all fiction, because I regard it as fiction, of course. And yes, he is. I mean, he's jealous, he's vindictive, he's callous, he's cruel.
And yet this is a God that is worshipped by, loved by, adored by, well, followed by millions, billions of people.
I hope not. I hope that the God that is adored by millions of people is a grown-up kind of God who is no longer... I hope that most people the kind of people I would like to know who worship and admire him, regard those stories as not literally true. Now, there are some who do regard them as literally true, and I suspect they either haven't read the Old Testament or they're not the kind of people I would wish to know, because you do not want to worship a character like that. By all means, worship some kind of great spirit of the universe, some kind of creative intelligence who created the universe, but don't worship this vile, vindictive monster of the Old Testament.
Why throw around these sweeping statements about religion? Not the God of the Old Testament, but religion itself being evil. I mean, do you believe religion is evil?
No.
But you say plenty of times in this book that religion is evil. You said in a speech famously that I think a case can be made that faith is one of the world's great evils, comparable to the smallpox virus, but harder to eradicate.
I do think that, yes. Because what I'm talking about there is faith, where faith means belief in something without evidence. Because if you believe something without evidence, then that justifies anything. You're no longer vulnerable to somebody coming back at you and saying, hang on a minute, let me argue the case. If you believe it without evidence, which is what faith is, then you don't argue the case. You say, no, I'm not arguing that case. This is my faith. It's mine. It's private. I don't dissent from it. I don't retreat from it. You're just going to have to accept it. Now, that is evil.
And yet you spend so much of your time debating people of faith. So clearly people of faith are interested in having discussions. They're not just all blind believers, insisting on their way of...
Well, nobody said anything about all of them. I mean, the vast majority of religious people are perfectly good, nice people, as you are. There's no suggestion I've ever made that all religious people are evil. Of course not. There is a logical progression that goes from believing in faith, having faith that your God tells you to do something, and doing terrible deeds like suicide bombing, like flying planes into skyscrapers. The vast majority of people of faith don't do such terrible things. But those people who do terrible things do it believing that they are righteous and good, and they think that they're doing the will of their God. So they're not evil people, they're actually good people by their own lights. They believe they're doing good things, and that's why religion is evil, because it can make you do evil things, believing that they are good.
Do you really believe that people who go out and carry out suicide bombings, it is faith? Religion is to blame, not geopolitics, not the world, not their lives, not what's going on around us. It's religion, plain and simple.
Not always, it's not in the case of the Tamil Tigers, for example, but I think in a great majority of cases it is, and I think it certainly makes it a hell of a lot easier. The evidence is plain that in many Islamic suicide bombers, you talk to them, those who fail, you talk to them afterwards, they've got paradise on the brain. They're desperate to go to a martyr's heaven, and that's what they think about.
Professor Robert Pape of the University of Chicago studied every known case of suicide terrorism, 315 cases, and he came to the conclusion that there's, quote, little connection between suicide terrorism and Islamic fundamentalism or any of the world's religions. The taproot of suicide terrorism, he says, is nationalism. It's about land, it's about power, it's about politics. It's not about faith. Faith is just a cover. What do you know that he doesn't know?
Well, I've seen other evidence. There are different people say different things. I've seen plenty of testimonies of suicide bombers who have said precisely that they do it because they want a martyr's paradise.
Do you include the 7/7 bombers in that case as well?
Yes, I believe so.
Have you watched their suicide videos?
I'm not sure if I have, no.
They talk about Afghanistan, they talk about Iraq, they talk about crusades, they talk about war between the West and the Muslim world, they talk about invading armies. I mean, there's a lot of real world stuff in there. I'm not saying, of course not, that faith doesn't play a role, but I'm just interested in this idea that you think faith is the issue. You said in a very famous column you wrote 4 days after 9/11 that this came from religion.
There are enormously good reasons for people to take political action, and this we see in Northern Ireland, we see it in Afghanistan, we see it in Sri Lanka where the Tamil Tigers operated. So yes, there are political reasons, but the promise of a martyr's heaven, which is, you cannot deny that this is part of Islamic doctrine. Martyrs go straight to paradise.
Yes, but not terrorists, not murderers, not criminals.